What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. So the 2025-26 NHL season about to start in about 3 months. We have to wait a long time to watch some hockey, which is kind of a shame, but it makes us appreciate our summer off and, recharge for the next season. I thought it'd be time now to rank, in my opinion, the top 10 teams that have the best chance at winning the Cup in 2026. There might be other teams that have a chance as well, but these are probably the 10 most likeliest. Some teams I even think don't really have much of a chance, but I put them on the list just so that I can have a top 10. So we'll see how it goes as we start right here. A few honorable mentions I wanted to say before we get a deep dive into the top 10. The New Jersey Devils, if they're able to stay healthy, they've been good in the regular season in the last few years. If they're able to, maybe a few moves, add some bit more grit to this team, they could maybe go on a run. The Ottawa Senators, I think, are another one that I think, an up-and-coming team that played Toronto pretty hard in the first round. And, unless maybe they forward a team like Florida, they could maybe go on a run. The Montreal Canadiens as well in the Eastern Conference, I think, are still a team that could surprise. A young team that has a lot of talent, a lot of potential, maybe a bit inexperienced, but they could be dangerous. In the Western Conference, the Minnesota Wild almost made this list. Another team that's been pretty good to start seasons, but also a bit like New Jersey's had some injury problems over the years. If they're able to stay healthy, they could be dangerous, even though they have a hard time winning in the playoffs, even when their full team is back like they did against Vegas this year. The St. Louis Blues were only 1 second away from the second round, and who knows what could have happened if they played the Dallas Stars. They're still a team that was pretty hot towards the end of the year. And if, yet again, this year, they play like they did towards the end of the year, they could be dangerous. And finally, the LA Kings, another honorable mention, a team that's been making the playoffs for 4 years in a row, but they've lost in the first one to the Oilers. If they're somehow able to beat the Oilers, they could maybe go on a run, even though I still have a hard time seeing it. So we're going to get started right now. Just note that I'm going on vacation for the next 2 weeks, so a lot of these videos that are coming out are going to be pre-recorded. So there might be a big trade or something that happens from now until this video is published. So if that happens, well, this video probably gets out of context, but still just note, because you never know what could happen, especially with, I think, a lot of players that are still in the market that I think are going to get traded still. So stay tuned for that. So coming in at number 10, I've got the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, the Leafs have been one of the better regular season teams in the last 7-8 years, but we all know the narrative. They cannot win in the playoffs. They've only won 2 rounds in the last 8 years, even with an elite core four of Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Morgan Rielly. However, this year they did lose Morgan Rielly in free agency. They traded him in a sign and trade to Vegas, and they got Nicolas Roy back. They tried, they added a few guys like Matthias Michelli and Dakota Joshua as well to help with their forward depth, but I still don't think their forward group is, to the level that they used to be. Some Leafs fans think that just getting rid of Marner, who hasn't really performed super well in the playoffs, is going to magically make your team perform better. I just want to mention, too, Austin Matthews and William Nylander did not perform much better. I would even argue that, Matthews has the excuse that maybe his back had some problems with his back, but William Nylander I thought was even arguably worse than Mitch Marner. So I think that I don't really view them being a top-tier contender. This is just probably because they're probably going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to have some sort of favorable standings finish. But again, this is not a team I see winning the Cup, especially that they don't really have an elite number 1 defenseman. And their goaltending, both Stolarz and Wall, can have some injuries, are fragile. So I think that for the Leafs, a good team, but far from being a Stanley Cup caliber. Now coming in at number 9, another Canadian team that's had a lot of regular season success, but in the playoffs has struggled, the Winnipeg Jets. They won the President's Trophy last year, and normally a lot of teams that win the President's Trophy the following year, they're able to break through and go on a long run in the playoffs. Unfortunately for the Jets, they lost one of their better players in Nikolai Ehlers, who left to the Carolina Hurricanes in free agency. They brought in Jonathan Toews, Gus Nyquist, Tanner Pearson, hoping to help with the forward depth, but I don't think any of those guys are going to replace Ehlers, who was really the play driver on their second line. They still have one of the better first lines in the league with Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde. They still have one of the better defensemen in the league in Josh Morrissey. Connor Hellebuck won the Hart Trophy this year, but has struggled in the playoffs. If Hellebuck is somehow able to take his game to another level in the playoffs and not struggle, especially on the road, the Jets could be dangerous. But as of right now, playing a tough Central Division, I see them once again probably making the playoffs, but again, not being able to go all the way for another. So basically, that's 2 Canadian teams, and there's only one more that's left that I'm going to be putting a bit higher. Now coming in at number 8, the team that finished first place overall in the regular season standings in the Eastern Conference, the Washington Capitals. Obviously led by Alex Ovechkin, John Carlson, Dylan Strome, Pierre-Luc Dubois, but they did it overachieve, I think, based on what was the expectations, which probably compete for a playoff spot, but instead they ended up finishing first place. In the playoffs, they beat Montreal in a series that I think was closer than a lot of people give the Canadiens credit for, they gave a good opposition to the Capitals, and in the second round against Carolina, Washington did not belong in the same league. They were completely outworked, outskated, and Carolina beat them pretty easily in 5 games. Capitals haven't done much to improve their team. They're basically rolling it back with the same team. Ovechkin is getting older. He just broke the record. I don't know how motivated he's going to be compared to last season. However, they do have Ryan Leonard that came over from college towards the end of the year and into the playoffs. Is going to be playing his first full season in the National Hockey League. I'd expect probably this team to take a bit of a step back, but they still are a physical team that, with the right matchups. I don't think Carolina was the greatest stylistic matchup for them. If they're able to find an easier path, they could maybe go on a deep run, but again, not really a true Stanley Cup contender in my opinion either. Now coming at number 7, another Metropolitan Division team, the team that knocked off the Washington Capitals in the second round, the Carolina Hurricanes. We know what Carolina is. They're a very good regular season team, well coached under Rod Brind'Amour's system, but that struggles come playoff time, especially offensively and in goal, where Freddie Anderson's a fragile goaltender, are often injured, and as the playoffs go around, they get to the conference final, he's not as sharp, and when they meet stronger teams as well, their offense dries up and they meet a hot goalie. The Metro Division is probably the weakest division in the National Hockey League. If I had to bet, they're probably going to end up yet again in the conference final. However, if they meet a team like Florida or Tampa Bay, I don't think that their team is good enough. I don't think they have enough high firepower in order to break through. So I put them 7th. I think this is a fair spot for them. You could argue higher considering their easier path. But that, like I said, if it's getting to the conference final, I'd probably have them 2 or 3 here. But it's getting to the Stanley Cup final, winning the Stanley Cup. I just don't think this team has what it takes, especially with Jesperi Kotkaniemi potentially centering yet again their second line. As we all know, KK is not the man for the job, that's for sure. Now coming at number 6 is the team that lost in the Stanley Cup final for the last 2 years back-to-back, the Edmonton Oilers, led by Connor McDavid, led by Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard. So you would wonder, why do I have them 6th? I think they lost a lot of depth. Guys like Corey Perry, Connor Brown. I mean, Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson didn't play big parts, but Evander Kane was pretty good in the playoffs. For a team that has some goaltending issues, some defensive issues, some depth issues, I just can't picture a team like this getting to the final 3 years in a row. Big decisions on Connor McDavid as well. He hasn't signed yet. Doesn't seem like they've had contract negotiation discussions yet. So, I mean, clearly there's uncertainty right now. If McDavid, I have a feeling that he's not going to resign if he doesn't view his team has the best chance at winning the cup. And he's probably, because that's his priority right now, he's winning the cup. He's done everything in his career individually, especially. So I think that for the Oilers, they have 2 guys that can carry their team pretty far. But there's in the Western Conference, you could argue they could get to the final again. But we know that we've seen the last 2 years, they're just not caliber of a team like the Florida Panthers that in the Eastern Conference, spoiler alert, is still one of the favorites to go to the final. I don't think that they match up well, and even worse, even less now considering all the players that they've lost in the offseason this year. Entering the top 5 with a team that is in a non-tax state, that's had some success, has won some cups in the last few years, but they seem like they're towards the end of their window. The Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously they won back-to-back in 2020 and 2021, and they also lost in the final in 2022 to the Avalanche. But they are starting to regress. Their defense core, Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough, they're starting to get older. Their forward depth is not anywhere close to how it used to be. Vasilevsky hasn't performed super well in the last few years in the playoffs either. They've lost 3 years in a row in the first round, including the last 2 years against Florida in 5 games. I still think, to be honest, they're probably the second best team in the Eastern Conference as of right now. But I think there's a huge gap between them and, spoiler alert, the Florida Panthers, that I think are the best team in this conference. We've seen, like I said, the last 2 years, it's not like Tampa Bay's necessarily got that much better either this summer. Unless a big move is made, I think 5 is a pretty fair spot for them, because I do think that the East is relatively wide open if they're somehow able to avoid the Florida Panthers. But I don't think that this team, once again, considering the lack of depth, I don't really know if they'll be able to get back to the level that they used to be, even though I still think, personally, deep down, that they still have at least a conference finals run left with this core. Now coming at number 3, a team that has made it to the Western Conference final in the last 3 years, but have lost every single time, the Dallas Stars. Obviously, the Stars were stacked going into the playoffs. Even without Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson, their best defenseman, one of their better forwards, out in the first round to the Avalanche. I was certain that the Avalanche would be able to beat them. Instead, they rally back in Game 7. Mikko Rantanen, who they acquired at the trade deadline, has a huge Game 7 performance, picking up a hat trick and eliminating his former team. They end up beating the Winnipeg Jets in 6 games relatively easily. But then to the Edmonton Oilers, where we thought they had more depth, they collapsed. I think a lot of their forwards didn't really perform super well, and they lost a few guys like Mason Marchment, like Mikael Granlund. So I think that the Stars aren't as deep as they were in the playoffs. And they also lost Dadonov, also got 20 goals this year, but no one really talks about it. Their defense core isn't very great, aside from their top 3 of Heiskanen, Harley, and Lindell. Cody Ceci was playing on the second pair. He's gone as well. And they also got rid of Matt Dumba, but I mean, those 2 guys weren't that great. But they haven't really replaced them either. So their right side defense is pretty poor. Their forward depth isn't necessarily as strong as it was in the playoffs, even though I still think it's good enough to win a cup. But I think that they have a lack of grit. They didn't really go much to the net. They relied a lot on the power play to score in the playoffs. But in reality, you can't expect to win consistently like that. The Stars are still a good team, but I question maybe that they could end up becoming maybe the new 2010 San Jose Sharks, a team that is really well built, that has cup aspirations, but just never able to get over that hump. It's still relatively early. I think that their window is going to be open for quite a long time as well, as the age of their core players are basically in the mid-20s. They could be good for at least 5, 6, 7, 8 more years, at least. So I think that this team that's going to have a lot of kicks at the can left. But as of right now, I still think that they have a few holes. Thus, I'm not putting them in the top 3 when it comes to Stanley Cup odds for 2026. Now, coming at number 3, I got the Vegas Golden Knights, a team that won the Cup 2 years ago, the most recent non-Florida Panthers team to win the Stanley Cup. But since then, lost in 7 games to the Dallas Stars in the first round in 2024, and lost this year in 5 games in the second round to the Edmonton Oilers. I think they've lost a bit their identity of being a pretty tough team to play against in their run. But they did make some big moves this summer. They got rid of Nicholas Hague. They got rid of Nicolas Roy. They brought in Mitch Marner to hope to add another a star player to a team that lacked a bit of scoring against the Oilers. However, that came at a cost of potentially losing Pietrangelo for the rest of his career. So that was probably their best right-hand defenseman. Was probably never going to play again. That's probably a thing where they're going to have to improve, because their forward depth is elite. But like I said, they have a really good defense core overall with guys like Hannah Finn, Theodore McNabb. But on the right side, they're pretty thin. When your best right-handed defenseman is Zach Whitecloud, that's not ideal. Another question mark I have is Aiden Hill. Obviously, with the year they won the Cup, he was amazing. A big reason why they won. However, the last 2 playoffs, especially this year, and against the Oilers especially, he's really struggled, gave up a lot of weak goals. Their backup goalie this year was Ilya Samsonov, who still hasn't signed anywhere yet, but he's most likely not going to be coming back. So Vegas at net is still a question mark. You could argue maybe to put Dallas ahead of him, and honestly, I wouldn't kill you for it. I just have a feeling Mitch Marner has something to prove. In Toronto, it never really worked out in the playoffs. I think the pressure was pretty big over there. It was too much for him. But in Vegas, on the team that I think is better built, won't have to be the big star, doesn't have the pressure of being the hometown kid. He could thrive there, and I have a feeling that something's going to happen with the Vegas Golden Knights in this year's playoffs, especially after 2 relatively early exits based on their expectations as a team. Now coming in at number 2, the team that I predicted in my playoff bracket to win the Stanley Cup, but they ended up losing in the first round in heartbreaking fashion in Game 7, the Colorado Avalanche. They won the Cup in 2022, but they lost a lot of key players from that run. Gabe Landeskog missed the last 3 years. He was their captain, but he did luckily come back for the playoffs, and he's going to be coming back. He's going to be playing again next year, thankfully. They lost Nazem Kadri as their second line center. They lost Darcy Kemper, who was their starting goalie. So down the middle and in net was a hole the last few years, and hence why they weren't able to really go super far in the playoffs. Luckily this year they addressed the goaltending by going to get Mackenzie Blackwood, and they addressed the second line center by bringing in Brock Nelson. Unfortunately, they didn't really perform super well, especially Nelson in the playoffs, but they were able to retain him for another 3 years, even though I'm not sure how well his contract at 3 years, $7.5 million per year is going to age. Let's be honest, he's still a pretty good second line center, especially that he has Nathan McKinnon in front of him. I think that McKinnon still have at least one more, long, deep run left. It may not be necessarily this year, but I have them as the top team in the Western Conference as of right now, considering the star power they have. I like the Brent Burns acquisition as well. He won't have to be playing top pair minutes like he did in Carolina and could thrive on a second or third pair as a good offensive defenseman on a team that's pretty talented. I think Colorado is still very, very dangerous, and I have a feeling they haven't said their last word yet. And finally, at number one, drum roll, the Florida Panthers. Who else? I mean, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. They didn't lose much either. They were able to retain Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, Brad Marchand, who were key contributors to their run this year. Obviously, Ekblad, Bennett have been there all the way, but Marchand was an amazing acquisition. While I may have question marks when it comes to how well those contracts are going to age, considering the types of players that they are, they're still, in the meantime, great players and important players for that team. Seth Jones, they acquired him at the deadline. They're going to have a full season of him. Their forward depth is basically unmatched. When you have a guy like Anton Lundell playing on your third line, who, in my opinion, I think on most teams would be a very solid second-line center. He's on their third line. He's doing very well there. My only question mark maybe with Florida is their goaltending, considering Sergei Bobrovsky is 36 or 37 years old. He's played a lot of hockey the last few years. They don't really have a reliable backup goalie. They took a chance on Daniil Tarasov. We'll see how he works out, how he plays in in Florida after struggling big time in Columbus this year. So goaltending might be their only question mark, but they're a team that plays so well as a team that they don't really need elite goaltending to get them out of trouble, because they're a team that controls the pace of play. They're not necessarily a fast team, but they're physical. They outgrind you. They outwork you. They can score. They do everything right. And with how the Eastern Conference is, with how easily they took care of Tampa Bay and Carolina, who are the two highest ranked teams I have on this list, Toronto was the only team that gave them a good fight in this run. But even then, it was game 1 and 2. And then as soon as Florida adjusted, that series is over as well. So Florida is still not only the best team in the Eastern Conference, but I still think the best team in the league and have to be the Cup favorites going into the 25-26 season. All right, so that puts an end to this video. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with this list? Which teams aren't too high? Which teams are too low? Don't forget to check out some of the videos coming out in the coming days, coming weeks, coming months, as we're in the middle of the dog days of summer. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again for another video. Ciao.